clock has started.
Roger, 0J, and I feel fine.
Hello, today we're going to take a look at the Paradigm Hornet and we're going to review its transport, its setup and its pointing. So taking a closer look inside the case, we can see the four main components of the Hornet terminal. Starting from the bottom up, we can see the PIM here. So inside the PIM we have the modem board specific to the GX network, and also on top here we can see the PIM interface allowing for quick and simple pointing. Over here we've got the RF head unit. Inside this we have the complete RF chain including buck, LNB, waveguide, and as well as that we've got a GPS and a gyro to allow again for the quick and simple pointing. Over here we have the petals for the reflector. This in fact is a 1 meter variant, but we also have options for an 80 and a 60 centimeter. And finally we have the feed horn up here. So now we're going to set the Hornet terminal up. We're going to start with the PIM, and you can see here that the legs are fully integrated, so there's no external tripod. These legs just swing out and they lock off with these dials on the side, and our third and final leg pulls out the back and locks off with this dial here. So now we're going to attach the RF head unit. Comes as a single piece unit, and if you look on the base here you can see we have these two pins. These are going to be our two anchor points onto the PIM terminal. So that slots in there, and then we use this lever to put across and lock them together. Then we need to connect the cable loom up, starting with our red TX cable, green for RX, the smaller Antenne connector for our PLS, which is the GPS and gyro, and then the larger Antenne to power the buck and manage it. So now we're going to go about attaching the petals. All of the petals are identical. They can slot in any order. So once you've got two petals next to each other, on the back of them there's a clasp which clips across to lock them together. So now to complete the setup, we just need to attach our feed horn. Now when we're talking about GX specifically, we need to set the terminal to right-hand polarization. So we're going to line up this arrow with the marker on the feed here. This collar pops into place to lock it off. So now the terminal's set up, I'm going to level it before I start the pointing process. I'm going to take a look at this spirit bubble here, and I'm going to use the feet to level the terminal. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to power the terminal on and start the pointing process. So now that we've leveled the terminal, we're going to power it up and get into the pointing process. Today we're going to be using AC power, but you can also use DC power in this port here. Now whilst we wait for the modem to boot and for our GPS unit to lock, I'm going to run you through the dials and the interfaces that you're going to use to point the terminal. So starting with our elevation, the course elevation is adjusted by a free-flowing mechanism. So by unlocking this clutch on the right hand side, we can just manually adjust the elevation like this. Our course azimuth is also free-flowing, which is adjusted like this. And then when you move into the fine pointing process, once the clutch is locked, you can use this dial here to adjust your fine elevation, and this dial here to adjust your fine azimuth. Now once the terminal is pointed, you're in the network and you're happy with your signal strength, you can lock the terminal off using this lock for elevation and this lock on the side for azimuth. So now the terminal is fully powered up and we have our modem booted, and we also have a GPS lock. The terminal is ready to point. But before we do that, I'm just going to use this button down here to mute the audio feedback. So because the modem is booted up and we have a GPS lock, the terminal has identified where it is in the world and therefore which is the most appropriate GX satellite to point towards. And this is actually indicated here on this LED crosshair. So the interface is asking us, the user, to point the terminal down and to the right. So I'm going to start this process now by adjusting our course elevation. I'm going to unlock the clutch and I'm going to swing the reflector down, and as you can see, as I start pointing the terminal down, these LEDs are turning off as we aim towards the center. Okay, so that's my course elevation done. And now I just need to swing through to the right, adjusting my course azimuth. And there we go. So we've just picked up the carrier signal for the satellite. You can see here that we have all of these LEDs now lit up, and we've transitioned into fine pointing mode. We also have RX lock now. We want to optimize the signal that we have. So now we're going to move over to using these two dials to adjust the fine elevation and the fine azimuth. So now we're going to adjust our fine elevation to peak our signal, and I'm going to pass up and down through the signal and then return to wherever the strongest point was. Now when we're in fine pointing mode, the signal strength is indicated by the amount of LEDs that are lit up on the crosshair. So a strong signal is when all of the LEDs are lit up green like this, and a weak signal is when there's only a couple in the center lit up. So I'm happy with that for my fine elevation. I'm going to do the exact same procedure with my fine azimuth. So passing back and forth through the signal, and then returning to where the strongest signal was. So I just got a flash of all the LEDs there, and what that actually means is that we found the new signal peak. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to press the point button. We're now going to wait for the terminal to get TX lock, and once that's done, the terminal will start to negotiate into the GX network. Once this flashing net light goes solid green, then we are certified in the network and we can start to pass traffic. So now we're going to take a look at some additional features that the PIM has that are relevant during the pointing process. In some cases, you may not be able to obtain a GPS lock, and if that is the case, then you can use the management control interface inside the PIM by using a laptop or any other smart device, and you can manually input a GPS location. Now when it comes to selecting the satellite, as standard, the terminal will automatically select the most appropriate satellite. However, in some cases, you may be able to see two satellites be on the edge of a beam, and one of those is going to be more appropriate due to line of sight reasons. Now what we can actually do directly from the interface is hold down the point button, and we can then manually select which satellite we want to point to. Now this can be cycled through just by tapping the button, or we can set it to an automatic acquisition mode. So now that we're finished transmitting, I'm going to stow the terminal for transport. To start, we're going to set the reflector to point vertically, and I'm going to remove the feed and place that back into the case. From there, we're going to unclip all of the petals from each other and then remove them one by one.
I feel fine.
We're then going to disconnect all the cables. And now we can remove the RF head and stow that as well. PIM legs can then be folded away, and then the PIM unit can be stowed. So that's the terminal packed away, ready for transport.